There's a gentleman on this wall behind you, and he's a phenomenal icon, if you will, Mr. Buck O'Neil. Can you talk a little bit about his legacy and why he's so important to not only Sarasota, but Kansas City and America and beyond?
Well, Buck is an ambassador. He was an ambassador for baseball, and he's an ambassador for Sarasota, an ambassador for athletes and people of color in this community and all over the country.
Take us to some of your earliest memories of Mr. O'Neil. Did you see him play? Did you talk to him? Did you meet him? Did you know him? Take us into Buck O'Neil, because to many people, he's an icon. He's a legend. You know, we never really got to interact with him that much. I mean, I met him once, but most people just kind of see him on TV.
Well, all of above. Got a chance to see him play. Interacted with him in the community. He was a very good friend of one of the persons that I worked for a long period of time, and they played together in the Negro League. And he would come once a year or twice a year. He would come back to Sarasota, and he would find all of his friends that he played with and all of the ladies that he knew, and he would spend time with them. And in fact, I got a chance to play golf with him. I got a chance to go to baseball games, and I knew him just on a personal level. In fact, probably his last haircut he got in Sarasota, I cut his hair.
What was he like?
He was a very charismatic individual that people gravitated to him, very articulate, he knew the game. He knew a lot of the players that went before him that he played with, and that was one of his treasures. I mean, he had the history of baseball. You know, Ken Burns done the documentary on him, and he was the main person of that documentary, and it was about baseball. But he was a person that had the history and knew the baseball and in and out.
He was a pioneer, and he had a lot to do with the museum in Kansas City, and you have a hat on your head, and his chest says Monarchs. Can you talk about Kansas City and his baseball career in the Negro Leagues?
Well, you know, it was kind of a mom and pop kind of a league during that period. But then when he went with Kansas City, there was a very organized baseball, and they played all over the country. And the hat and the shirt here, this is a Jackie Robinson shirt, his 50th anniversary, and it was given to me by Buck O'Neil. And what he done for that baseball, and he talked about Jackie Robinson, and he was a forefront of Jackie Robinson. He opened a lot of doors. As Jackie Robinson opened a lot of doors, Buck O'Neil's opened those, helped those doors open wider.
Recently, there was a local gentleman, Mr. Pascal, who was honored a couple days ago out of Bradenton.
Yeah, Pittsburgh.
Talk a little bit about that gentleman.
Well, that's a special piece of the history of this community here, Pastel. And I have, my wife have a cousin that played with that particular team, the Bradenton Nine Devils. And they had the Sarasota Red Sox. And they were the very competitive teams during that period of the Negro League. And they played each other, and they played throughout the state of Florida. But I think we just have one living now, that's Pastel. And they honored him the other night at the Pittsburgh Pirates baseball park.
Every time we're in Rosemary or in Sarasota and we ride down the street, we can look here and see Mr. O'Neil and think about his legacy. When you look up there and see your friend, what do you see?
I see struggle, I see perseverance, and to overcome all of that, and to see the young African-American ball players have an opportunity to get paid and to be able to play in the majors. And I have to do a lot of the credit to Buck O'Neil.
We just lost a gentleman who made a legacy and a major impact with the NBA, with the Boston Celtics. We can remember the Cleveland meeting with Abdul-Jabbar and Jim Brown and so on and so forth. But can you talk about Mr. Russell and his basketball legacy?
Well, of course, his basketball legacy. I mean, no one can deny what he done in basketball. I think was 9, 10 championships, being our first African-American coach. But the thing that stands out more for me is for him that incident that you were talking about. He was the courage he took to be able to stand up during the civil rights era and to make those statements with those individuals. And they've always been heroes to me, the Jim Browns and all of the ones that stood up with him. So that is so special.
When I saw Mr. O'Neal, I covered a Negro League reunion in Memphis in '02, and I watched, he was a tall gentleman, I watched how people ran up to him and gravitated to him, kids, and he signed autographs and baseballs. Can you just talk about his spirit and his personality and how everybody just loved him?
Yeah, I think it comes from just the respect and the way he carried himself, you know. He was a person that was adapted to people in the community. He was involved with a lot of the civil rights movement. So, and special all of his accolades he got through basketball and his sports endeavors. So I think people just gravitated to it, and it just came from respect and appreciation of some of the things that he accomplished and some of the things that he had done. And he stands very high in my book too.
He always talked about Sarasota, and he's one of Sarasota's own. Just talk a little bit about that part and why Sarasota was so important to him.
Buck O'Neal? Mm-hmm. Yeah, Buck O'Neal. Well, one thing, you know, sometimes when people become successful, they forget where they come from. He never forgot where he come from. And he would always come back and he would spend time. He would spend time with the kids. And it just wasn't the black community. It was Sarasota. I mean, he was the darling of Sarasota. In fact, they named the park, you know, one of the county parks after him. So he has always been loved in this community. But he was a person. He was a person of the people, and I think that's what made him so special.
Mr. Grimes, in closing, is there anything else you want to say when we think about the legacy of Mr. Buck O'Neal and even Mr. Russell on this particular day, but to pay homage to a great gentleman and baseball icon, and Buck O'Neal with this wonderful mural?
We have to definitely treasure our history and never let it die, and to make sure that it stays and people that come after us would know some of the positive things and the great things that these individuals have done.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.